Test 49, section 2, question 7. Any fruit that is infected is also rotten. Okay, infected, huh? Infected with what? I didn't know that fruit could be infected. Infected with a bacteria? And then it just immediately rots. Because you're saying that if it's infected, it's automatically rotten. I guess it could have rotten first. It could have rotted first and then got infected. It doesn't have to be causal. It's just that every fruit that is infected is in fact rotten. So it either happens simultaneously or the rotten happens first. Okay, no fruit that was inspected is infected. I don't really think I can link those two together because the first sentence is about things that are infected. If you're infected, you have to be rotten. The second sentence just says, oh, wait, I can link it together. If you're infected, then you couldn't have been inspected. I get it. Okay. So I know two things about infected fruit. I know that they're rotten, and I know that they were not inspected. Okay. Therefore, they claim, and remember, this is going to be the bullshit part, so you've got to have the bullshit detector turned all the way up. You read this and you go, any fruit that was inspected is safe to eat. Oh my. Very bad argument. This argument commits the cardinal sin of bringing up new shit in the conclusion. You're not allowed to bring up new shit in the conclusion of your argument, okay? By the time you get to the conclusion of your argument, if I haven't already granted you your conclusion, then I'm not going to end up granting it to you, right? It has to be proven by your evidence. And they did not prove anything about safe to eat because as far as I know, rotten is safe to eat, infected is safe to eat, inspected or not inspected is safe to eat. Maybe everything's safe to eat or maybe not. Maybe everything is unsafe to eat. You're forgetting about what if it was inspected. Okay, if it's inspected, then I know it's not infected, but it could be unsafe to eat for a million other reasons. What if it's it could just be a poison apple. That's not rotten, that's not infected, but it could be poison and therefore not safe to eat. All right, so we find a natural objection here to this conclusion, which just was, you told me that if it's inspected, then it's not infected. But just because it's not infected, that doesn't automatically mean it's safe to eat. But now we switch teams. The question says, the conclusion of the argument follows logically if which one of the following is assumed. And what that's doing is it's telling us, okay, you need to make this argument win, right? So I'm looking across the desk at a potential client. This is a potential client that I'm interviewing here. They can prove that if you're infected, you're also rotten. They can prove that if you're inspected, then you can't be infected. So if you're infected, then you were never inspected. So I know that infected fruit is rotten, and I also know that infected fruit was never inspected. I know that for sure, and I've got that on my yellow legal pad, and I'm going to grant them that. That's their evidence. They can prove that part. But I'm looking at this client, and I'm going, wow, safe to eat, huh? That's really coming out of nowhere. The defense is going to jump all over us if we just randomly pull out safe to eat out of nowhere. You need to get from your evidence to the conclusion. And so do we know that if you're not infected, then you're safe to eat? Because I'm granting you, if you're inspected, then you're not infected. But is infected the only way that you can be unsafe to eat? I hope you see what I'm trying to explain here, which I'm asking this prospective client, I'm going look, if you're going to win your case, you're going to have to be able to prove this thing. There's a missing piece of evidence here that needs to go in our brief if we're going to be able to reach this conclusion. And again, it's if you're not infected, you're safe to eat. We always have to predict the answer on a sufficient assumption question. If you're not infected, then you're safe to eat. A says it's not safe to eat any fruit that's rotten. That doesn't help me prove that if you're not infected, you're safe to eat. Remember, they're trying to say if you're inspected, which means you're not infected. I know that for sure. Then you're safe to eat. What does rotten have to do with it? Like the gap that needs to be bridged, I've already told you what that is. So I look at these wrong answers on sufficient assumption questions and I'm just like, nope, next. Like rotten's not going to have anything to do with it. B, it's safe to eat any fruit that's not rotten. Oh, wait, maybe does that get us there? Wait, if you're not rotten, yeah, then I just don't know anything about you. Like I need to get from inspected to safe to eat. And the only thing I know about inspected is that you're not infected. Now, if you are infected, then you're rotten. But it just doesn't get me there. It's not getting me there. The answer has to say, if you're not infected, then you're safe to eat. C, it would have been safe to eat infected fruit if it had been inspected. What? That still doesn't prove that inspected fruit is always safe to eat. Because what if it's not infected? Like, what if it's just poison? Again, the same thing is I've got this poison apple, in my mind, and it's like, okay, but this apple is not infected. It's not rotten. It's not infected. It was inspected, and the inspection found that it has poison. How are we going to prove that that's safe to eat? I need if it's inspected, it's safe to eat, or I need if it's not infected, it's safe to eat. D, it's not safe to eat any fruit that is infected. Yeah, but I want if you're not infected, then it is safe to eat. And those mean two different things. E, it's safe to eat any fruit that's uninfected. There we go. If you're not infected, then you're safe to eat. That's the answer. I was yelling about it, an hour ago. It bridges the gap between the evidence that we have and the conclusion we want. It's entirely predictable. The answer is E.